Hey readers, Echo here. I had some issues with part 2 of my every book I read in 2021, so I'm just going to skip straight to the top 10. Let's start with a couple of honorable mentions. I read When We Cease to Understand the World last year, and it's a really good book. This sort of nonfiction in the space of biography, pop science, is not something that I read very much anymore. It's something I used to read a lot 12 years ago or so. Not so much anymore, but this was very well written. Lots of interesting characters and some very interesting ideas. It's very nearly in my top 10, and Orpheus over at Death is a Gang Boss has made an excellent video on it, so I recommend you watch that if you haven't already. Also an honorable mention to I read the 3 first mostly books in his Catastrophe Practice series, and I thought Catastrophe Practice was a little tricky, a little opaque, a little too difficult, and it's sort of very inspired by Brecht's theater. And what's going on is that you have all of these different actors on a stage that realize sometimes they become unsure of themselves. Sometimes they're thinking about themselves as actors on a stage, and sometimes they seem lost and confused as to why they are on a stage. And so there's like sort of this phasing in and out of the characters, and you see a bit of it reflected in Serpent, which is a much easier and more fun book to read. And Imago Bird is the second book, is really the simplest of the 3. Here we get sort of a self-insert of Nicholas Mosley going to a therapist to have some speech therapy. He was, of course, through Oswald Mosley's, the famous fascist's son, and you sort of get here how it is growing up in that sort of political family, the sort of parties that take place in their home, and fairly conventional, but still quite good. Well, as we come to this, which is more experimental, no traces of Mosley as such, except there could perhaps be a little bit of Mosley, because he took 2 of his books and he turned 2 of them into movies, and in this book there is the main character. This all takes place on an airplane, and it's like this guy's in first class and he's writing a script that he's trying to get producers and directors to read, because they're supposed to be making his movie, but everyone is too busy drinking and having a good time and doesn't really care. The character's wife is writing in coach with their kid, and we get it cuts to his movie script sometimes, and here we get little sort of like a repetition of themes from the first book, and you have this movie that seems to be sort of in between a play and a movie, and sometimes the characters, they sort of notice that they're on set and they notice these things, and sometimes they notice that they are actors delivering lines, and other times it's not so clear. They feel it seems more like they're inhabiting the role. which is kind of confusing because when you read it, at times it feels like a script, and at other times it feels like a recital or a rehearsal or like the filming of it. So it's a bit more postmodern, but still very fun, and I'm very excited to see how this all ends in the big hopeful monsters finale. But yeah, just outside of the top 10, honorable mention. So let's get into the top 10. Bath Fugues by Brian Castro. I think this is an excellent book. It was very surprising to me. Sort of came out of nowhere. It was really not on my radar, but it's like very. It says that the book is composed of 3 interwoven novellas. They really are interwoven, and it's they don't feel separate. I mean, they are from different perspectives, but the characters intersect in their stories, and there's this point counterpoint structure to it, and it is, I'm always drawn to books that share my aesthetic. So let me see here. Do not see Fabiana very often, yet I seem to know her well. Perhaps because when she plays Bach's Goldberg Variation, since she always plays variation number 26, or variation number 25 if the aria is bypassed, with sadness in her face. I read this in her ancestry. It was upon this variation that Bach understood genius, I said to her, because if you listen to the key changes, you will see both destiny and chance there. She looked puzzled. Yes, I said, it's a key change of pure genius, spiraling upwards, aleatoric because there is no willing, only chance, some rude questioning about the future, rising up like smoke towards God. No theme, no pure noun, no subject, total risk, like a Francis Bacon painting. I was waxing lyrical now, eager to reveal my former friendship with the great painter. The love of the roulette wheel and the questioning of God, I said, are present in their genius, in both Bacon and Bach. And this genius howls in the minor key because it is ill. It is through with elevating the sacred, reaching upwards only because it is degraded, brilliant, because abnormal, deep, because it is denatured and cursed with catastrophe. Sentences to greatness, I said to Fabiana. It was the moment at which Bach understood. So yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful book. Very, very steeped in literature, art, music, and a sort of a main character who's having a fall and sort of a falling apart even. But yeah, so I thought this was surprising and very, very good. Matthew Sabine Castro, number 10. Number 9, I have Tor Ulven. If it had been the entire prose collection, it probably would have been number 1, but I only read Replacement this year. I sent a copy of Replacements to a few friends because it is the only Ulven that is translated to English, and it's like a short novel of his. Normally he wrote, I should say, he's dead. Normally he wrote either poems or prose fragments, and interestingly he started out writing poetry and found that he saw more opportunities in prose, if I remember correctly. I could be misremembering. I think that Tor Ulven is probably the supreme Norwegian prose writer of all time. I did not like Replacement as much as what I read from him before, but it was still very good. But yeah, still worthy of a number 9. Number 8, Tea with Mrs. Goodman by Philip Toynbee. Talked about this in my first video ever, I think. It's a very interesting book from 1947 that I found out about just by reading a book chapter on the British experimentalists. This book has its structure explained here with the different narrators and sort of recurring narration of the the 11 pages of where the story takes place, and where the different narrators come in and start telling uh, their own record of what happened. You sort of piece together what happened, sort of by drawing information from the different narrators. And I really enjoyed this, and I think that particularly two or three of the narrators had like a very rich and sort of lush inner monologue. It's interesting how they or how Philip Toynbee decided to use this sort of strange way of like revealing its narrative, like peeling away layer by layer. Now, what I think this book accomplishes is more than just a postmodern unveiling of a mystery at a tea party. It is a very detailed description of this tea party, since it keeps repeating different descriptions, and you get to know what these different characters over here of the others and such. But it it has a mythic layer on top of it, and it's not as specific and accomplished as what Joyce does in Ulysses, but there is depth to analyze here that I think is very interesting. I'm going to read a little section from it. In joy I claim Mrs. Goodman. I knew her instantly for my special hostess, and knew myself her chosen guest. Tom, I claim Mrs. Goodman. Yet I have only murmured it, hummed it to a summer tune, and Tom is deaf. In the nursery he would grant the sickly elder brother a quota of such claims, confined to my sharpest needs, my most implacable desires. And by those old precedents he'll surely grant me this, for why should he covet the warm nest that's Mrs. Goodman, or long as I do to be an egg in it? Tom, I claim her. Now the larks over Lemnos ream out the frowning memory of our first arrival, and I can recall it to forget it. There was some pity in her smile, welcoming me to that one high Jacobean chair. Down I sat, in trust, in confidence, to crash, the carved legs splaying backwards from the seat. It was Tom, dear brother, in his dearest, most familiar role, who picked up the chair, banged it twice with his oarsman's fist, sat squarely and securely down on it himself. And now the room's all blue and gold. The wild vine climbs through the sunny corner window and writhes at the fluted lampstand. On the mantelpiece, a dried spiny urchin saltens the air. Boulders tumble under the cypresses, and there, bone white and dry above us, is the Parthenon. All the scents and ghosts of the south are in this room. Dry gold of my Aegean, the lemon and the lizard, the encrusted bed of the sea, clear as my hand through 40 feet of lucent water. And here too is the rainless fertility of Syrian gardens, beside the bloody rivers of Adonis. By my hostess sits Daisy's blooming brother, damp black curls and heavy lashes, young enough to be the lady's son. How silently he blooms, this Noel Tillet, with what assurance! But come now, Max, my foolish dear, you must feel no antipathy, for he is not her son. Graciously, graciously, he too will recognize your claim, and dance, brown-eyed, full-lipped, this ceremony of your adoption in the olive grove. Only in the bloom of his skin is he his sister's brother, his white and pink and golden sister, your love. Oh, when will she come? Thank you, Mrs. Goodman. Let me see. With just the same tender air of knowing, she offers us a plate of coffee-coated biscuits, on each a white sugar animal embossed. For its crouched legs and streaming ears, for its gentle but mistrustful eye, I choose the hare. Tom, for his own bold reasons, the bull. What Tillet chose I couldn't see, but Mrs. Goodman laughs with curious pleasure at his choice. Laugh for me, Mrs. Goodman, and see with those cradling eyes the delicacy bedded in my indelicate face. And in return I'll proclaim you the poetess of vineyards, autumnal beekeeper and guardian of the field mouse. Under the canopy of grape and wine leaf, I'll lay my head on your aproned lap and listen to your old stories of the vineyard. Now, this narrator is a very different style, a much more poetic, and he's a well-educated classicist from what his brother tells of him later. But it is interesting. We do get some of these ideas. It starts with sort of these mythic choices of the animal crackers and the way these consciousnesses not quite interact, but the way they unfold. You also get sort of these Jungian ideas, and I think that it's sort of interesting how the different characters sort of have these overarching archetypes that it needs puzzling out. And I think this is like, it's a very short book and a quick read, but it's like, it's a rewarding to reread and think about, because it's not that it's that deeply steeped in literary allusions, but there is a puzzle, and there is something to uncover there. 7, Diary of a Humiliated Man by Felix de Asua is very intellectually spry book. It's about a man who is very blasé with modern life and wants to live a deliberately banal existence. He's like a mix between the Underground Man and Musil's Man Without Qualities. It's a very erudite novel. The main character starts out rather blasé, but he has sort of a fall through the underworld where he goes into petty crime, and he loses his mind, but always elusive and interesting. And I think what I like about it is just like, it's clearly written by an intelligent, well-read man, the kind of person you'd like to have long talks with at cafes. So it's like a bleak misanthropic novel, but yeah, it's good fun. Just at the very end of the year, I read Plus by Joseph McElroy, coming in at number 6. I think Plus is very good. I think that it starts out a little slow, but I think that it has to with the way he builds this book up, because the book is about, and there will be some minor spoilers here, but nothing too major. There is something of a plot to spoil, I suppose, but it's more a book of exploring an idea, and we learn that there is an intelligence called Imp Plus that is orbiting the Earth and is stationed out to monitor glucose production, and it's monitoring photosynthesis in outer space. So we learn fairly quickly that this is a human brain that is orbiting the Earth in a spacecraft, monitoring photosynthesis and giving Earth glucose readings. And what's interesting is that it has a limited vocabulary starting out, but there starts to awaken memories, and the brain sort of has to rediscover a working vocabulary. So it starts out sort of linguistically quirky, and it becomes more complex as it goes. And so I think like the book, it's very interesting from the beginning, but it really picks up around the midway point when the brain stops caring too much about the glucose monitoring and sort of delves into sort of its limitations at what it can and can't do, and remembering what it has lost and what it is. And you get these flashbacks to life on Earth before the brain was disembodied, and it's very good. And I feel like the biology and medicine aspects are very well written. I think it's clear that he has done. McElroy did a lot of research into trying to write the most accurate speculation about how to write something that wouldn't be very quickly dismissed. Not to say that it is realistic, because it's not like our brain has an awareness of everything and what's going on in our brain on the anatomical level. Our brain is very modular, and we have some sensory inputs to our brain that travel into our thalamus and sort of is distributed in and gets integrated and reused several places and forwarded through different areas. But it's sort of an emergent phenomena how we become conscious of these things. And it's when you look at how the sensory inputs are cut from the brain in this, it's not entirely clear why it would be able to monitor such details about itself. But it's sort of the kind of conceit you have to make to write such a book. So it can't be entirely realistic, or it wouldn't be able to tell you interesting things about how it was developing and the things that were happening. But I'm not going to complain about that. I was, for the most part, very, very impressed with how he had taken the time to learn the anatomy and learned a little quirks of anatomy. He was talking about the optic nerve and the chiasma and how when it crosses, it changes name and becomes the optic tract, and lamenting the sort of retinoganglion system that's no longer attached to it. But yeah, this is my first McElroy, even though I have Heinz Kidnapped, Women and Men, Letters Left to Me, Actress in the House, at least those on the shelf as well. And people talk about how difficult McElroy is, and this is probably one of the easier McElroys to get started with. So yeah, I would recommend this if you can find maybe an EPUB or a library copy. I would very, very much recommend this.